Hi, welcome to QuickTalk, the MedTech Startup Podcast. I'm Axel Strombergsson, Vice President here at Veeva MedTech. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the changes to the FDA regulations for medical devices, where the FDA is now aligning their regulations to be closer to ISO 13485, also known as the changes to the QMSR. With me, I have Carolyn Guthrie from Helix Medical, and she's an expert when it comes to quality assurance and regulatory affairs for medical devices. Hi, Carolyn. Welcome to QuickTalk. I'm super excited to have you here today. As you know, today we're going to talk a little bit about the changes to the FDA medical device regulations, where the FDA are currently looking into changing their regulations slightly to align with ISO 13485. So great to have you here to learn a bit more about that. Before we jump in, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and share a little bit about your experience and what Helix Medical is doing.
Sure. Hi, Axel. Yes, it's so great to be here. So I started Helix Medical in 2021 after spending over 15 years in various quality and regulatory roles in various size and types of med device organizations. At Helix Medical, we offer quality and regulatory consulting aimed more at med device, but we do go into other areas too, and it covers both the US and the EU in majority, but we do touch other regions too. And our offerings, we go through from strategy all the way through to submission and beyond, including helping and to establish and implement quality management systems, which is why I am here today to talk about a very current topic.
Awesome. Thanks you for that. So on a high level, tell me about these changes. What is happening right now and why is this happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this has been quite a long time coming, with the last edition or revision rather to 21 CFR 820 being done in 1996. So it's quite a few years ago. So this has been a long time coming, and it's really brought us closer to what the ISO 13485 requirements are. So the sort of international standard for quality management systems. So the FDA just published a final rule, and this is going to implement a new quality management system regulation that is actually going to replace what is known as the quality system regulations now found in 21 CFR 820. And it's what this final rule does is amends the FDA current med device good manufacturing practice is what it's called. It's going to amend those expectations under its quality system regulation to align with ISO 13485 2016. So what it is, when we talk about harmonization, the whole idea behind this is to try and thankfully alleviate the burden on industry. So as much as possible, FDA has incorporated by reference the requirements from ISO 13485 2016 without modification where possible. But there are still some additional requirements that the FDA feel they do need to put in place that ISO 13485 does not require. And these are really to align with the FD&C Act. So there's certain requirements in there. Some of these are requirements for control of records, requirements around packaging and labeling. And also one of the big changes, something that I think is a little bit uncomfortable for some of us, just being so used to 21 CFR 820, is the removal of the exception related to FDA viewing various records. So under 21 CFR 820, you could provide it, but they were not, it wasn't a requirement that they could view management review minutes or internal audit reports, supplier audit reports. That is now being removed. So it's going to be a change for some of us when they come in and do an inspection.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So people are involved.
Yeah.
And who will this affect?
Sure. This is going to affect any organization that is currently required to meet 21 CFR 820. So there's no change in who this applies to, who doesn't. So depending on your device classification, you may be GMP exempt, which exempts you from complying with the general controls around good manufacturing practice. But if you're not GMP exempt, your organization will need to start planning this transition soon. Of course, if you are currently ISO 13485 certified or even just compliant, this is going to be a simpler transition.
Awesome. So basically, pretty much all class 2 and class 3 devices, and some class 1 devices will be affected by this.
Pretty much, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So you mentioned that this just happened, that they released the final rule. What is the time frame to get in compliance? What are we talking about here?
So yeah, the final rule was just published. I mean, it's very recent, published on the 2nd of February, 2024. And unlike what was written in the draft rule, which was 1-year transition, there was actually a 2-year transition for companies. So as of February 2nd, 2026, the FDA shall start to enforce the new QMSR. Just a note, this doesn't mean you have to be ISO certified. You do not need to be ISO certified to be compliant with QMSR. It just means your documentation needs to follow the requirements of ISO 13485.
Oh, gotcha. So basically a two-year time frame to get in compliance then.
Exactly.
So and what would be the ramifications if you are not getting in line within this time frame? What can happen?
Sure. So again, as I mentioned earlier, part of being a sort of med device manufacturer is complying with general controls as required. And unless GMP exempt, you are required to follow good manufacturing practice. So like some of the other general controls, this needs to happen prior to commercialization. And that's an important part. It's commercialization that is important. And once you're sort of commercial, once you've actually done your establishment registration is when you're on the FDA radar, and they say that their intent is to inspect every 2 years. Whether they can manage that or not with their resources is another thing. But once you have an establishment registered, you can expect an inspection from the FDA. And that's where they look at your quality management system. And that's where they're going to detect whether you're compliant or not. So like the inspections that happen now to the QSR, the enforcement actions could be a Form 483 or observation. It could go a little further to a warning letter, and it can go to way more severe enforcement actions. But that's where they're going to detect it at an inspection of your facility.
Gotcha. That's helpful. So a lot of our audience here at QuickTalk are early startups working towards that FDA clearance or approval. If you're in the midst of product development, you're gathering your data for safety and effectiveness, are they being impacted right now, or what? How does that apply now to those companies?
Sure. And the stage of your company is really going to have an impact on this. But if we're looking at really early startups or startups that are in their design and development phase, your submission is focused around the objective evidence you're building as part of your design. So your design and development process. So you should be building or compiling your design history file. As we know it now, the names will change, but the design history file, and that's the data that's submitted to show safety and performance, safety and effectiveness, etc. So as long as you're complying with current design controls, you're not going to have there's not going to be a huge difference in your submission. You just need to make sure that your design history file or medical device file, when they come to inspect, once your establishment is registered, that it complies with the QSR. So impact, if you have a submission right now, probably minimal, as long as you're doing the right thing. You're building the right objective evidence. But in terms of QMS, you can still be following 21 CFR 820. You could still be following ISO 13485 2016. And then this transition under design controls is probably going to be one of the more minimal impacts of this transition.
Okay, so that's great. Awesome. So finally here, for the audience listening here, if you're part of a medical device company and you need to start acting on this, what are some practical next steps that people can do and take to understand more about this, what they need to do, and then start getting in compliance?
Sure. And probably the most important aspect of this is understanding what you need to do. And I'm sure half of the audience is going to have been involved in the ISO 13485 2016 transition. So a lot of us may not be too or unfamiliar, as well as EU MDR. So there's been a lot of transitions recently in that regulatory landscape. The first thing to do is plan. So plan your process, plan your transition. I would say understand whether you're required to comply or not. Going back to, are you GMP exempt or not? Understand where you're going to be impacted. So step one, let's assume you need to comply. Step one, create your strategy. This doesn't only sort of outline what you need to do, but it allows stakeholders of your organization to understand the requirements around this transition. And I think something that we learned in the EU MDR transition is communicate to the stakeholders and let everyone understand the impact to their areas. Step two, perform a gap analysis. So a gap analysis, so someone within your organization or a consultant can help outline the differences. What has actually changed? Step two of that gap analysis, do it against your own procedures. So really get an understanding of the burden on your own organization. And then, of course, step three, start slowly planning or start implementing that transition for one process at a time if you need to. You have 2 years, take advantage of the 2 years. Don't leave it to the last 6 months. It makes it harder. Of course, if you're already ISO 13485 certified, it's going to be an easier transition, a simpler transition. In fact, you're probably going to be removing things rather than adding. If you've only been 21 CFR 820 compliant, it's going to be a bigger transition. So, and of course, someone like Helix Medical can help make that much easier because that's what we do. And we understand the requirements and also understand how to implement them.
That's awesome. And as far as information, has the FDA provided any type of guidance document? I know they do that for certain areas. Is there some sort of a easier type of reading than the regulation itself?
Okay, so yeah, great question. This is so new. There's no guidance document, and whether they will or will not be, that I'm not sure. But because they're aligning themselves so much with ISO 13485, there's a great compliance guide that is available for ISO 13485. That's how I would start. Use that compliance guide to bring yourselves up to the 13485 requirements, and then add on the FDA requirements.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Carolyn. This has been great. I didn't know about this like 10 minutes ago, and I feel like I got a good overview. And it's great, for the audience, if they need help, can reach out to Carolyn at Helix Medical and get some assistance in getting.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Axel, for inviting me. And open for any questions.
If you enjoyed this episode of QuickTalk, hit like and subscribe. And for additional educational content, visit our website at quickvault.veeva.com.